In my opinion, one of the most interesting periods in human history was the era of disunity in ancient China. More specifically, the Three Kingdoms era. It officially lasted from 220 AD to about 280 AD, and this is wherein China was split into three warring kingdoms. To the north were the Cao Wei, founded by Cao Pi after inheriting the land and general foundation from his father, the infinitely ambitious warlord Cao Cao. To the east were the Eastern Wu, founded after its ruler Sun Quan had declared himself to be the emperor. And to the west were the Shu Han, founded by the benevolent Liu Bei as a means to restore the Han Empire. Thanks to romanticized fiction surrounding the era, the Three Kingdoms period is still pretty well known amongst many. However, an issue lies in the fact that most people don't know where the fiction ends and the truth begins, which is what I wish to do with this series. Just like before, I'm going to be using portraits from Koei Tecmo's long-running Romance of the Three Kingdoms series, as well as a few new tricks to make this difficult series as easy to understand as possible. My name, of course, is Tyler Valle, and I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to the rebooted history of the Three Kingdoms. So to understand the Three Kingdoms era, we need to understand the foundations of which these kingdoms were built upon, and to do so, we need to go back about 40 years or so, to the year 184 AD. During this time, the Emperor of China was a man by the name of Emperor Ling, and he ruled over the waning Han dynasty. It was around this time that China was suffering from mass starvation, brought on by a slew of natural disasters. Many peasants from northern China were even forced to move south in search of food and work. Unfortunately, the south wasn't faring for them much better, because most of the peasants that were working down there were being exploited by wealthy landowners as a means to amass personal riches. The peasants were then even further punished with ridiculously high taxes to help pay for garrisons along the Silk Road, which was an ancient trade network that connected the west to the east, as well as garrisons to fend off foreign intruders. These horrid conditions would eventually lead the poor, landless peasants to join forces with the meager landowners and unemployed military men to form roaming bandit gangs, and eventually they would become China's first private military forces. During this time, the Han government was in a pathetic standing. For many years, the wealthiest landowners had been consolidating their power, which was just taking power away from the centralized Han government. However, the worst aspect of it was the eunuchs of the Imperial court, who had begun to build their influence, and use said influence to increase their own personal wealth, much to the detriment of the peasants of China. Though there were many eunuchs that were involved in this corruption, the 10 most influential eunuchs would go on to form the upper echelon of the eunuch faction of the Imperial court, and they were called the Shi Chong Shi, or 10 attendants. The influence of the 10 attendants over the emperor was so strong that he even began to refer to one of them as his foster father. This would actually be used to help convince the peasants that the government was feeble and corrupt and needed to go. And as China continued to be rocked by natural disasters, the peasants even began to feel that the emperor may have even lost his mandate to heaven. A mandate to heaven in this case was a religious principle that was used to justify the emperor's right to the throne in China. If he lost his mandate to heaven, that meant he was no longer worthy of his title or throne. If he was overthrown in battle or in revolution, that also meant that he lost his mandate. It was perfect justification for just about everything. To give you a proper understanding how the peasants and people of China felt at this time, I'd like to read you an excerpt from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms book. It fell upon the day of the full moon of the 4th month, 2nd year of the period Qianning, that the emperor went in state to the Wei Tai temple. As he drew near the throne, a rushing whirlwind arose in the corner of the hall, and lo, from the roof beams floated down a monstrous black serpent that coiled itself up on the very seat of majesty. The emperor fell in a swoon. Those nearest to him hastily raised and bore him to his palace, while the courtiers scattered and fled. The serpent disappeared. But there followed a terrific tempest, thunder, hail, and torrents of rain, lasting until midnight and working havoc on all sides. 2 years later, the earth quaked in Luoyang. While along the coast, a huge tidal wave rushed in, which, in its recoil, swept away all the dwellers by the sea. Another evil omen was recorded 10 years later, when the rain title was changed. Hens suddenly developed male characteristics, a miracle which could only refer to the effeminate eunuchs meddling in the affairs of state. At the new moon of the 6th month, a long wreath of black vapor wound its way into the audience chamber, while in the following month, a rainbow was seen in the jade chamber. Away from the capital, a mountain fell in, leaving a mighty rift in its flank. It was also during this time that a Taoist sect had begun to really amass a large following, though they had been building for about 14 years or so. Led by 3 brothers, this group was called the Way of Supreme Peace. The head of this group was the eldest brother, a man by the name of Zheng Jiao, who carried the title of General of Heaven, and was a renowned faith healer. As Zheng Qiao toiled amongst the desperate and starving peasants, he began to realize that this was the emperor's fault that they were suffering so badly. As he helped those that he could, he at the same time began to spread his teachings, and these peasants would actually go on to be the first followers of Zheng Qiao. Zheng Qiao's followers believed him to be a mystical sorcerer who worked to spread the teachings of an ancient god. And according to Zheng Qiao himself, the deity had bestowed upon him the sacred text called the Crucial Keys to the Way of Peace. Among his teachings, Zheng Qiao preached about equality and equal rights of all people, and of the importance of equal land distribution. The teachings spread quickly amongst the poor, and soon they began to wear yellow cloths among their clothing to show their loyalty to the General of Heaven. Zheng Qiao had believed that an apocalyptic event was soon to be upon them, and it would be he who would lead the new world. And the only way to usher in this new world would be to bring an end to the corrupt Han Empire. This would spark a new beginning, a world rebuilt from the ground up based on the teachings of Taoism. When it became clear that rebellion was Zheng Qiao's main goal, the Yellow Turbans, as they've begun to call themselves, created a new slogan. The azure sky is already dead. The yellow sky will soon rise, and when the year is Jiaxi, there will be prosperity under heaven. For 14 years, Zheng Qiao and his two brothers prepared for their massive uprising, and finally a date had been set for their new beginning. April 3rd of the year 184 AD. To make matters worse for the Han, for nearly a year beforehand, a commander within Zheng Qiao's movement, a man by the name of Ma Yuanyi, had been traveling to the capital of Liaoyang to start building alliances amongst the officials and people who existed in the city. The influence of the Yellow Turbans was so severe that it even reached the Imperial court itself, and had them willing to turn their backs upon the Emperor for Zheng Qiao's new world. Ma Yuanyi's main plan was to stage an actual attack on the main capital of China around the same time that the rebellion began, because he felt that the Han's Imperial army would be too busy trying to put down the Yellow Turbans to properly defend their emperor. Unfortunately, several months before the actual rebellion was supposed to begin, Zheng Qiao was betrayed by one of his own men. A man by the name of Ma Tong had sent a mysterious letter to the Imperial court, alerting them of Zheng Qiao's plan to attack the Han. Ma Yuanyi was quickly rounded up and killed by being torn to pieces by chariot. And then the emperor placed the brother of his second wife in charge of purging the city of all potential traitors. By the end of the purge, thousands were rounded up and executed, and arrest requests were made against all members of the Way of Supreme Peace. And with their backs against the wall, there was no other option than to start their rebellion early. The rebellion sprang up chiefly in three places. Zheng Qiao and his brothers rose up north of the Yellow River, near the Wei Commandery. The second uprising sprang up in two commanderies in the Yu province, and the third and final major uprising took place in three commanderies in the Henan province. In the first months of the rebellion, the Yellow Turbans would see great victories because the Han government was much more preoccupied with the removal of any potential Yellow Turban supporters within their capital. Once Liaoyang was secured, the emperor once again placed the brother of his second wife, a man by the name of He Jin, in charge of the Imperial army tasked with putting down the Yellow Turbans. He Jin brought together three different armies to go and deal with the rebels. One was tasked with killing Zheng Qiao, while the second and third were sent to the Henan province to deal with the rebels there. The second and third armies were under the command of two men, Hong Fu Song and Zhu Jun. And as they moved on the Yellow Turbans, it was Zhu Jun who suggested that a young warrior from the southeast named Sun Jian be appointed to a commander position to raise his own army and march north into Henan to help quell the rebellion. Sun Jian was able to raise a force of about 1,000 men and join forces with Zhu Jun, where they would meet the Yellow Turbans in battle. When the fighting first started, the Yellow Turbans were simply able to overwhelm the Imperial military. Rebels that had risen up in Nanyang, one of the prefectures of the Henan province, were even able to kill the Grand Administrator of Nanyang, which was a massive blow against the Han, as well as defeated Zhu Jun in combat and killed a second Grand Administrator in the prefecture of Runan. The Han, however, refused to collapse into a defensive, and within 2 months the tides of the war began to shift. Huangfeng Song and Zhu Jun had combined their forces and were able to defeat the rebel leaders in Henan. Afterwards, they split their forces once again. Huangfeng Song traveled north to deal with the rebels that continued to operate north of the Yellow River, while Zhu Jun stayed behind to deal with the rebels that still existed within Nanyang. It was during this fighting that Zheng Qiao and at least one of his brothers were slain in combat. The rebels in Nanyang were then forced to flee after taking multiple losses against Zhu Jun's army, but instead of simply disappearing, they decided they were going to try to attack another commandery by the name of Wan, which they successfully took over and bunkered down into for a few months. For the next final months of the year 184, the vast majority of the fighting would take place around the Wan commandery, and by the 11th month of the Chinese year, the Wan commandery was then assaulted and successfully stormed by Imperial forces, who proceeded to slaughter all of its its defenders. By the next month, the rebellion was all but over, and all that was left to do was to do a little bit of cleanup on stragglers across the country. And in February of 185, the Han government would announce that they were changing the era name to Zongping, which roughly translates out to pacification achieved. The Yellow Turban Rebellion was officially over. For about 2 months, because a smaller rebellion would then spring up around the Tahang Mountains in a few smaller provinces. The Yellow Turbans would actually go on to continue to fight against the Empire to little to no success, pretty much just sticking to being bandits attacking travelers and merchants and the occasional soldier for about 20 years or so, until a relatively unknown warlord by the name of Cao Cao seeked to subjugate them. But instead of just killing the rebels like he was sent to do, he decided that he would win them over to his cause by promising them irrigation reform, which, to be fair, was what the rebels initially wanted in the first place, and by the year 205, the Yellow Turbans would no longer be seen as a threat to anyone. Though the Han was able to withstand the Yellow Turban Rebellion and Jing Qiao's new beginning relatively unscathed, its problems were only beginning, because in the year 189 AD, Emperor Ling died, and his brother-in-law He Jin began to plot to rid the corruption that plagued the Imperial court. He wanted to remove the influence of the Imperial eunuch faction, which we will discuss in the next episode. So thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Hey there everybody, my name is Tyler Vi. Thank you guys for watching the first rebooted episode of the History of the Three Kingdoms, and I only have a few things to just ask you guys, so I'd like you guys' feedback down below. Do you like this format where I go into a little bit more detail, but to make up for it I speak a little bit faster, or would you like me to slow things down and make my videos a bit longer? Before I edited this video, or the audio for this video, it was about 23 minutes total, due to, me making mistakes, but I thought maybe I had done pretty well and the video was just going to be really long. Unfortunately, I don't think that many people were going to be able to sit through a 20-minute video talking about history once a week. So let me know what you guys think down below. How would you like me to format these videos going forward? I also have to ask you guys another question. There's going to be a straw poll down in the description, and I would love your guys' answer to this question. When I was reading the first little bit out of the first volume of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, I was having a lot of fun reading it, and I was actually wondering if you guys would also watch a spin-off series where I would read chapter by chapter the 2 volumes of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms that I currently have. These videos just come out maybe once or twice a week. They just be there for you guys. They just be a little bit fun, something easy that I can put out there for you big history buffs. I also want to let you guys know that while I'm also working on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms history videos, I'm also working on a Sengoku Jidai or Sengoku era Japan history series that's going to go along coinciding with this one. I plan and hope that eventually I get to the point where I'm able to put out 2 history videos a week, one on Monday, which is a Chinese history video, and one by Thursday or Friday, which is a Japanese history video. Though it may also come down to me putting out one Chinese history video every week, or every other week, and one Japanese video every other week. So it'd be Chinese, Japanese, Chinese, Japanese, Chinese, Japanese. They'd be formatted roughly the same way. So depending on how you guys give me feedback now, that'll determine how I really sort all that out. Thank you guys again for watching. Let me know how you guys think. Remember to like, favorite, comment, and subscribe because of the new YouTube algorithms. We do need that interaction from our fans so we can actually be seen by other people. That's about it. Thank you guys for being patient and constantly asking for new episodes. I'm sorry that it took me so long to get this done. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Bye.